The baby was nearly lifeless when the nurse decided to place him next to his twin sister. You won't believe what this desperate measure caused. Emily Johnson walked briskly through the hospital corridors, her mind already tuned to the tasks awaiting her in the neonatal intensive care unit. It was a routine she knew well, but each day brought its own challenges and surprises. Today would be no different. Upon entering the neonatal intensive care unit, she was greeted by the soft sounds of heart monitors and the constant hum of life support machines. The room was lit with a soft, calming light designed to keep the babies tranquil. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sterile air. This was her world, and she was ready to face it. Nurse Alice Williams, a veteran nurse and Emily's mentor, was adjusting the equipment of one of the incubators. "Good morning, Emily," she said with a welcoming smile. "Ready for another day?" "Good morning, Alice." "Always ready," Emily replied, adjusting the badge on her uniform. "Do we have any new cases?" "Yes, we're monitoring a few routine cases, but nothing critical so far," Alice explained, handing her a tablet with the patient charts. "Let's hope it stays that way." Emily began reviewing the charts, familiarizing herself with the ongoing cases. Among them was a premature baby who was recovering well and a newborn with mild jaundice. She made mental notes of what needed to be done and started her morning rounds. As she checked the vital signs of the tiny patients, Emily felt the familiar sense of purpose and responsibility. She knew that every move she made was crucial for the baby's well-being. Every adjustment to the equipment, every gentle touch, every whispered word to anxious parents was all part of her life-saving work. By mid-morning, the tranquility of the neonatal unit was interrupted by an emergency. A pregnant woman in complicated labor was being rushed to the operating room. Emily was called to assist, her experience in high-pressure situations quickly put to the test. Laura Thompson was in premature labor, accompanied by her husband, Michael, who held her hand tightly while trying to offer comfort. The expression of pain and fear on Laura's face was clear. "Everything will be okay, Laura. We're here for you," said Emily, trying to convey calm. Dr. Carter was leading the medical team, and everyone knew it was a critical situation. "We need to act quickly," he said, focused. "The mother is in danger, and the babies are premature. Prepare for a possible emergency cesarean." The labor was intense and tense. Laura screamed in pain while Michael, with tears in his eyes, tried to be strong. "Please save my babies," she pleaded, holding Emily's hand tightly. "We'll do everything we can," Emily replied, squeezing Laura's hand firmly. "You're strong, Laura. We're here with you." The cesarean was performed quickly, and the twins, Sarah and Grace, were born prematurely and extremely fragile. Emily and the neonatal team were ready to receive them, working swiftly to stabilize them and place them in incubators. But Laura's condition was also critical. She was losing a lot of blood, and her blood pressure was dangerously low. Dr. Carter and the surgical team fought to control the bleeding and stabilize her. Michael watched everything with horror and despair. "Laura, stay with me," he whispered, holding her hand. "You have to stay." After moments that seemed eternal, the situation began to stabilize. Laura was taken to the ICU, while Sarah and Grace were carefully placed in their incubators in the neonatal intensive care unit. Emily felt a temporary relief, but knew the battle was far from over. In the days that followed, the neonatal intensive care unit was on high alert. Emily split her time between caring for the twins and monitoring Laura's recovery in the ICU. The situation was still delicate, and every detail was crucial. Emily closely monitored Sarah and Grace's vital signs. Sarah was more stable, but Grace showed signs of complications. The medical team worked tirelessly, adjusting ventilators and administering medications to stabilize the little ones. As she watched the twins, Emily felt a deep connection with them. "You are little fighters," she murmured, carefully adjusting the tubes. We're all rooting for you." Laura was also in her constant thoughts. Emily visited the ICU whenever she could, talking to the nurses responsible for the twins' mother's care. "How is she?" Emily asked, concerned. "Laura is showing signs of improvement," one of the nurses replied. "Her blood pressure is stabilizing, and the bleeding has been controlled. But she still needs a lot of attention." Emily observed Laura through the ICU window, feeling a wave of compassion. She knew the recovery would be slow, but she was determined to offer all the support necessary. Michael's presence beside Laura, holding her hand, was a sign of hope and strength. In the neonatal intensive care unit, Michael spent long hours beside Sarah and Grace's incubators, holding their tiny hands through the glass and murmuring words of love and encouragement. "We're here, my little ones. You are strong, just like your mother." Emily, beside him, felt the pain and hope in his words. "Michael, we're doing everything we can for them, and Laura is receiving the best care. It will take time, but they will be okay." "Thank you, Emily," Michael said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know what we would do without you." As the battle for the twins' lives and Laura's recovery continued, Emily remained steadfast, guided by her intuition and dedication. Each day brought new challenges, but also new hopes. And with the strength and unity of the Thompson family, she knew they could overcome any obstacle. In the neonatal intensive care unit, Emily closely monitored the twins. Sarah was stable, but Grace showed signs of complications. She knew every second was crucial for the survival of the premature babies. Michael, still in shock after the events of the birth, entered the neonatal unit. His eyes were red from crying, and he looked exhausted. "How are my daughters?" he asked, his voice trembling with worry. Emily approached, trying to offer some comfort. "Sarah is stable and responding well to treatment. Grace, however, is facing some complications. We're closely monitoring and doing everything we can to stabilize her." Michael took a deep breath, trying to process the information. "And Laura? How is she?" "Laura is in the ICU, but stable. The doctors are taking good care of her. I know this is a lot to process, but your daughters are strong, and we're here to help them," said Emily, placing a comforting hand on Michael's shoulder. He nodded, still looking lost. "I want to see my daughters. I need to see them." Emily guided him to the incubators. "Here they are. I know it's hard to see them like this, but they are fighting." Michael approached the incubators, looking at the small bodies connected to wires and tubes. "They are so small," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Please, do everything you can to save them." "We are, Michael. And having you here makes a huge difference. Talk to them, touch the glass. They can feel your presence, and it helps," Emily encouraged. Michael nodded again, leaning close to the incubators and murmuring words of love and encouragement to his daughters. Emily watched, feeling deep empathy for the anguished father. She knew that every gesture, every word, every touch had a significant impact. As the days passed, Laura began to recover slowly. Michael divided his time between the ICU and the neonatal intensive care unit, trying to be present for his wife and daughters. However, Grace's condition remained critical, and Emily spent more and more time beside the twins. One afternoon, while monitoring Grace's vital signs, Emily heard a soft whisper beside her. It was Laura, who had been released from the ICU and was now in the neonatal unit to see her daughters. "How is she today?" Laura asked, her voice laden with anxiety. "Grace is still fighting, but we're doing everything we can," Emily replied, trying to convey confidence. "She is strong, Laura, and having you here makes all the difference." Laura nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "It's so hard to see her like this. Sarah seems so stable in comparison. I feel helpless." Emily gently took Laura's hand. "Your love and presence are incredibly important. Even if it seems like little, your words and touches can bring comfort to them. That night, as Emily watched Grace struggling to breathe, an idea came to her mind. Her intuition told her that placing Grace next to Sarah could help, but she knew this practice was uncommon and risky. Even so, something inside her said she needed to try. The next morning, Emily decided to speak with Dr. Carter. "Doctor, I know it's an unconventional approach, but I believe putting Grace next to Sarah could help. Sarah is stable, and perhaps their proximity could have a positive effect." Dr. Carter frowned, visibly surprised by the suggestion. "Emily, this is highly risky. The chance of contamination and infection is very high. We can't risk Sarah's health." Emily felt a tightness in her heart. "I understand your concerns, doctor, but Grace's situation is critical. I feel this may be her only chance." Dr. Carter shook his head firmly. "I can't authorize this. We need to find other ways to help Grace without exposing Sarah to unnecessary risks." Disappointed, Emily returned to the neonatal unit. The tension and despair increased as the hours passed. Grace continued to fight for her life, and each passing minute seemed to bring more uncertainty. Emily knew she needed to do something, but felt powerless in the face of the doctor's decision. Michael and Laura also felt the weight of the situation. They spent long hours beside the incubators, holding their daughter's tiny hands and murmuring words of encouragement. Emily could see the pain and worry in their eyes, which only increased her determination to find a solution. As night fell, Emily couldn't shake the intuition that uniting the twins was the key to helping Grace. She knew she needed to find a way to convince Dr. Carter and the medical team that this was the best option, but time was running out quickly. The next morning, Emily tried again to approach Dr. Carter. "Doctor, please reconsider. I can't shake the feeling that this could make a significant difference for Grace." Dr. Carter sighed deeply. "Emily, I appreciate your dedication, but we need concrete evidence to make such a risky decision. We're exploring other alternatives." As Dr. Carter walked away, Emily felt frustrated but determined. She knew time was running out, and she needed to find a way to help Grace before it was too late. Her intuition continued to guide her, and she was willing to do whatever it took to save that little life. The days passed quickly, each one bringing more anxiety and fear. Emily continued to monitor Grace closely, but the situation only seemed to worsen. Grace's breathing became increasingly irregular, and her vital signs fluctuated dangerously. One morning, as Emily checked the monitors, she noticed Grace's oxygen levels were dropping rapidly. "Dr. Carter," she called out, the urgency in her voice attracting everyone's attention in the neonatal unit. Dr. Carter rushed to Grace's incubator, his face tightening with concern. "We need to stabilize her immediately," he said, starting to give rapid instructions to the team. "Adjust the ventilation. Prepare for another round of medication." Michael and Laura, who were in the waiting room, heard the commotion and rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. Seeing the tense expression on Emily's face, Laura grabbed Michael's hand tightly. "What's happening? Is she getting worse?" Emily struggled to stay calm as she explained the situation. "Grace is in crisis. We're doing everything we can to stabilize her, but it's critical." Desperation gripped Michael and Laura. They approached Grace's incubator, whispering words of love and encouragement as doctors and nurses worked frantically around them. Time seemed to drag as the medical team tried everything to save Grace. Each passing second without improvement increased the tension in the room. Emily could feel the growing despair within her, but knew she had to stay focused. Dr. Carter shook his head, frustrated. "She's not responding as we hoped. We need to think of alternatives." Michael, with tears in his eyes, turned to Emily. "Please, do something. Anything." Emily felt the pressure of all Michael and Laura's hopes and fears weighing on her shoulders. She knew the situation was desperate and that they needed a quick solution. She remembered her intuition about placing Grace next to Sarah, but Dr. Carter's previous rejection echoed in her mind. As the crisis continued, the atmosphere in the neonatal intensive care unit grew increasingly tense. Grace's monitors continued to beep, indicating problems. The medical team was doing everything they could, but the little warrior was losing the battle. Emily knew she couldn't give up. She needed to find a way to help Grace, even if it meant challenging norms and risking everything. That little life depended on it, and she was willing to do whatever it took to give Grace a fighting chance. With the situation deteriorating rapidly, Emily knew the time was coming to make a critical decision. She needed to convince Dr. Carter to try her idea, no matter how risky it was. Time was running out, and Grace couldn't wait any longer. Emily knew the time was coming to make a critical decision. With Grace's condition deteriorating rapidly, she couldn't wait any longer. She took a deep breath and decided to try again. As she checked the monitors, she noticed Grace's oxygen levels were dropping rapidly, and her skin was starting to turn a bluish hue, a clear sign that she was struggling to breathe. "Dr. Carter," she called out, the urgency in her voice attracting everyone's attention in the neonatal unit. Dr. Carter rushed to Grace's incubator, his face tightening with concern. "We need to stabilize her immediately," he said, starting to give rapid instructions to the team. "Adjust the ventilation, prepare for another round of medication." Michael and Laura, who were in the waiting room, heard the commotion and rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. Seeing the tense expression on Emily's face, Laura grabbed Michael's hand tightly. "What's happening? Is she getting worse?" Emily struggled to stay calm as she explained the situation. "Grace is in crisis. We're doing everything we can to stabilize her, but it's critical." Desperation gripped Michael and Laura. They approached Grace's incubator, whispering words of love and encouragement as doctors and nurses worked frantically around them. Time seemed to drag as the medical team tried everything to save Grace. Each passing second without improvement increased the tension in the room. Emily could feel the growing despair within her, but knew she had to stay focused. Dr. Carter shook his head, frustrated. "She's not responding as we hoped. We need to think of alternatives." Michael, with tears in his eyes, turned to Emily. "Please, do something. Anything." Emily felt the pressure of all Michael and Laura's hopes and fears weighing on her shoulders. She knew the situation was desperate and that they needed a quick solution. She remembered her intuition about placing Grace next to Sarah, but Dr. Carter's previous rejection echoed in her mind. As the crisis continued and Grace's bluish hue intensified, Emily made a bold decision. Ignoring protocols and the possible reaction from Dr. Carter, she took Sarah from her incubator and carefully placed her next to Grace. Emily acted quickly, positioning Sarah next to Grace in the same incubator. The few seconds that followed seemed to last an eternity as she adjusted the monitors and checked Grace's response. Michael and Laura watched in silence, their hearts beating erratically with uncertainty and fear. Dr. Carter returned to the room, immediately noticing the change. "Emily, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice filled with incredulity and anger. "You don't have authorization for this. You're putting Sarah at risk." Emily looked up, determined. "Doctor, there was no more time. Grace was dying. We had to try something." "This is highly irresponsible," Dr. Carter shouted, his voice echoing through the room. "You could lose your job for this." At that moment, a soft alarm sounded, and everyone turned to Grace's monitors. Slowly but noticeably, Grace's vital signs began to stabilize. Her breathing became more regular, and her oxygen saturation began to rise. The room fell silent, everyone in disbelief at what they were witnessing. Dr. Carter, still visibly angry, watched the monitors with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. This can't be real." Michael and Laura moved closer to the incubator, looking with renewed hope. "They're improving," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Grace is improving." Emily felt a profound relief, but also a lingering concern. She knew that despite the initial improvement, the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. However, that small sign of progress was enough to reignite hope. Dr. Carter, although still reluctant, couldn't deny what was happening before his eyes. "We'll continue to monitor them closely. This doesn't change the fact that it was an unnecessary risk, Emily, but perhaps it made a difference." Emily nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "Thank you, doctor. We'll continue to care for them and ensure this improvement continues." Emily was nervous as she entered the hospital meeting room. Dr. Carter and the hospital director, Dr. Jonathan Harris, were already seated, waiting for her. The atmosphere in the room was tense and filled with uncertainty. "Emily, please have a seat," said Dr. Harris, gesturing to a chair. "We need to discuss what happened yesterday." Emily sat down, feeling the weight of the situation. Dr. Carter began speaking, his voice firm. "Emily, what you did was highly risky and against hospital protocols. You put Sarah's health in danger by acting without authorization." She nodded, knowing the criticism was justified. "I understand, doctor. But Grace was dying. I felt I needed to try something different, even if it was risky." Dr. Harris looked at Emily, his eyes serious but also understanding. "We understand the critical situation and the urgency you felt. However, acting without the consent of your superiors is a grave violation of hospital procedures." Emily felt her heart tighten. "I know. I take full responsibility for my actions." Dr. Carter continued. "Despite the success of your intervention, the fact remains that you disobeyed direct orders. The decision to place the twins together could have had disastrous consequences." Dr. Harris intervened, his voice softer. "Emily, we recognize that your intuition played an important role in Grace's recovery. However, we cannot ignore the severity of your decision. We are facing a complex situation." He paused, looking at Dr. Carter and then back at Emily. "Dr. Carter and I have discussed the situation and reached a consensus. You will receive a formal warning for acting without authorization. It is essential that all team members follow protocols to ensure patient safety." Emily felt a mix of relief and concern. "I understand, doctor. I promise to be more careful in the future." Dr. Harris nodded. "We believe that having someone with good intuition on the team can be beneficial, but we need you to work within the limits of hospital protocols. Promise to be more cautious with your decisions going forward." "I promise," Emily said sincerely. "Thank you for understanding and for the opportunity to continue working here." Dr. Harris smiled slightly. "We're all here to save lives, Emily. We just need to ensure we do it in the safest way possible. You can return to work, and we hope to see more of your good work, but always with due caution." Emily stood up, feeling relieved to continue caring for the twins and other patients. She knew the warning was fair and that she needed to be more careful. With a renewed sense of responsibility, she returned to the neonatal unit, determined to continue making a difference but always respecting the protocols. The following weeks were marked by a meticulous routine of care and constant monitoring. Sarah and Grace were still in the incubators, but their vital signs had stabilized. The neonatal intensive care unit was calmer, and the tension that had hung over the medical team began to ease. Emily dedicated herself completely to the twins, ensuring that every detail of their treatment was followed meticulously. The two little fighters were showing signs of progress, and each day brought new hope. One afternoon, while adjusting Grace's monitors, Emily was approached by Nurse Alice. "You've done a good job, Emily. I know it was risky, but your intuition saved a life." Emily smiled, still feeling the weight of the warning. "Thank you, Alice. I just wanted to give Grace a chance. It wasn't easy to make that decision." Alice nodded. "I understand, and we all learned something from this experience. But remember to always communicate your intentions to the team. We work better together." As they talked, Anna, another nurse, joined them. "I heard about the meeting with Dr. Harris. It must have been tough." Emily sighed. "It was. But I know the warning was fair. I promise to be more careful in the future." Anna smiled encouragingly. "You have a big heart, Emily, and that makes you an excellent nurse. We just need to find a balance between intuition and protocol." The three nurses continued to talk while caring for the twins. There was a strong camaraderie among them, strengthened by the difficulties they faced together. Emily felt grateful to have such supportive and dedicated colleagues. Later, while checking Sarah's vital signs, Dr. Carter approached. "Emily, I wanted to thank you for your continued effort. I see how dedicated you are to your patients." Emily was surprised and grateful for Dr. Carter's words. "Thank you, doctor. I want to do my best to help these little fighters." Dr. Carter nodded. "And you are. We'll continue to monitor them closely, but I think we can be optimistic about Sarah and Grace's recovery." The routine at the hospital continued, but now there was a renewed sense of hope. Michael and Laura visited their daughters every day, bringing a bit of joy and normalcy to the neonatal intensive care unit. Emily watched with satisfaction as the parents interacted with the twins, whispering words of love and encouragement. One night, while finishing her shift, Emily met David, the hospital's maintenance technician, adjusting some equipment. "Hi, David. How are things?" David smiled. "All good, Emily. I heard about what you did for the twins. It was a brave act." Emily shrugged modestly. "I did what I felt needed to be done, and luckily it worked." David nodded, admiring. "You're an inspiration to all of us, you know?" Emily was touched by David's words. "Thank you, David. That means a lot." As the hospital slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Emily knew the road was still long. But with every step, every gesture of care, and every act of courage, she and her team were making a difference. And that was what mattered most. The day finally arrived. After weeks of intensive care and constant monitoring, Sarah and Grace were ready to leave the neonatal intensive care unit. The medical team was euphoric about the twins' progress, and Michael and Laura couldn't contain their joy and gratitude. Emily was at the end of her shift when she received the news. With a smile, she headed to the incubators where the twins were now prepared for discharge. Michael and Laura were beside their daughters, cradling them lovingly. "Congratulations, you two," said Emily, approaching. "Today is a big day." Laura, tears in her eyes, smiled at Emily. "Thank you, Emily. You were part of this. We couldn't have done it without you." Michael nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "You were our guardian angel, Emily. We don't know how to thank you." Emily felt a lump in her throat, moved by their words of gratitude. It was a privilege to care for Sarah and Grace. They are true fighters. As Laura placed Grace in the car seat, Michael gently held Sarah. "Emily, there's something we've always wanted to ask," he said, looking directly at her. "What made you believe that putting the girls together could save them?" Emily took a deep breath, feeling it was the right moment to share her story. "There's something about me that you may not know," she began, her voice soft. "I have a twin brother, Matthew." Laura and Michael looked at her in surprise. "Really? We never imagined," said Laura. Emily smiled. "Yes, Matthew and I have always had a special connection. Since we were little, we always knew when the other was sad, scared, or sick. It was almost like we could feel what the other was feeling. And whenever we were together, that presence helped us both physically and emotionally." She paused, recalling precious moments from her childhood. "It was that connection with my brother that made me think that maybe Sarah could help Grace. I knew there was a risk, but the intuition that their proximity could make a difference was very strong." Michael nodded, understanding. "So you trusted your own experience?" "Exactly," Emily replied. Seeing the special bond between Sarah and Grace reminded me of how Matthew and I always helped each other. I felt that if they were together, they could strengthen each other. And thankfully, it worked. Laura, emotional, hugged Emily. That's incredible, Emily. Your intuition, based on love and the connection with your brother, saved our daughters. We are eternally grateful. Emily returned the hug, feeling deep satisfaction. It was a privilege to help, and seeing Sarah and Grace strong and healthy is the best reward I could ask for. As the Thompson family prepared to leave the hospital, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. The journey had been long and difficult, but the special bond between the twins and their parents' love had overcome all challenges. Michael and Laura thanked her once more before leaving with their daughters. We promise to keep in touch and let you know how they're progressing, said Michael, smiling. I'd love to hear about their growth, replied Emily, waving as the family left through the door. Watching the Thompson family leave, Emily knew that the experience would stay with her forever. And with the strength of intuition and the importance of human connections clear in her mind, she was more determined than ever to continue making a difference in her patients' lives. Months had passed since Sarah and Grace left the hospital. Life in the neonatal intensive care unit continued with new challenges and new little warriors fighting for their lives. Emily remained dedicated to her work, carrying the lessons learned from the twins' experience. One day, Emily received an unexpected letter. It was from Michael and Laura Thompson. She opened the envelope with curiosity and found a photo of the twins, now visibly bigger and stronger, along with a heartfelt letter. Dear Emily, we hope this letter finds you well. We wanted to share a bit about how our little fighters are doing. Sarah and Grace are growing healthy and happy. Every day, we see in them the strength and special connection that help them overcome the most difficult moments. We remember with gratitude every moment you spent with them, your courage and intuition that saved Grace's life. We are eternally grateful for the care and love you offered us during that difficult time. We would like to invite you to the girls' first birthday party. It would be an honor to have you with us to celebrate this incredible journey. With love and gratitude, Michael, Laura, Sarah, and Grace. Emily smiled as she read the letter, feeling deep joy at seeing the twins' progress. The invitation to the birthday party was a reminder of the positive impact her work could have on families' lives. On the day of the party, Emily arrived at the Thompsons' home, feeling a bit nervous but happy. Michael and Laura greeted her warmly, and she was immediately taken to see Sarah and Grace. The girls were radiant, surrounded by balloons and colorful decorations. "Emily!" exclaimed Laura, hugging her. "It's so good to see you. The girls will love meeting you." Sarah and Grace, now 1 year old, were full of life and energy. Emily felt a wave of emotion as she saw them so healthy and happy. "You've grown so much," she said, smiling at the twins. Michael approached with a glass of juice. "Emily, we can't thank you enough for what you did for us. Having you here today is very special." As the party continued, Emily spent precious time with the Thompson family, sharing stories and laughter. Seeing Sarah and Grace so full of life was a powerful reminder of the positive impact her work could have. Leaving the party, Emily felt inspired and motivated. She knew she would continue facing challenges in the neonatal intensive care unit, but Sarah and Grace's story was a testament to the power of intuition, human connection, and love. She returned to the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to continue helping other families find hope and strength in moments of despair. And with the memory of Sarah and Grace always present in her heart, Emily knew she was exactly where she should be, making a difference in her little patients' lives.